7 million years ago, East Africa. The world is a steamy, shadowy place. Towering ferns and leafy vines blanket the landscape. And high above it all, in the trees, an ape-like creature swings from branch to branch. This creature, much like today's chimpanzee, spends its days leaping deftly between trees and its nights sleeping with its troop in the safety of the forest canopy. But this creature is different in one crucial way. As it walks along a branch or reaches for a tasty morsel of fruit, it does so on two legs. In that moment, something profound has happened. The very essence of humanity has been set in motion. Our story starts here, 7 million years ago, when our ancestors split from the evolutionary path that led to modern chimps and bonobos. Over millions of years, our lineage had already diverged from the common ancestor we shared with the great apes, but now we were truly on our own. Who were these first human ancestors? What did they look like? How did they live? And most importantly, why did they walk upright? We don't have many answers to these questions, but we do know some fascinating details about them. For example, thanks to genetic analysis of humans and chimpanzees, we know that our last common ancestor was neither ape nor human as we understand those terms today. Instead, it was more like a strange hybrid of the two. It would have walked on all fours like a chimp, but it would also have looked somewhat human-like with no fur, no tail, and perhaps even with hands and feet similar to ours. But while it may have looked funny, this creature was anything but. It lived in a world filled with ferocious predators such as the saber-toothed cat, Homotherium, and the terrifying big cats, Panthora and Sutellurus. It would have been constantly on the lookout for danger and had to contend with the harsh realities of life in the wild. But despite the dangers that lurked around every corner, this species was remarkably successful and would go on to thrive in Africa for hundreds of thousands of years, until, in the space of a few million years, it gave rise to several different species of early humans. These included Australopithecus afarensis, best known from the famous fossil Lucy, and Australopithecus africanus, who both lived in East Africa between 4 and 2 million years ago. But the most famous early human is undoubtedly Australopithecus sediba, who lived in South Africa from 2 to 2.6 million years ago. Discovered in 2008, this hominin species is thought to be one of our closest relatives, sharing a recent common ancestor with us sometime before 2 million years ago. So far, only a skeleton of a female and some isolated teeth and bone fragments of others have been found. But what is fascinating is that the skeleton of a sediba was almost certainly the product of a deliberate attempt to hide it. It is possible that she climbed into a cave with her infant son and huddled together for warmth during a cold night, or perhaps she used the cave as a birthing chamber. Sadly, both mother and child died for unknown reasons, perhaps illness, perhaps predation, and were buried by flowing water. However, it wasn't until at least 100,000 years later that our ancestors started to bury their dead intentionally. What does any of this tell us about how and why our ancestors walked upright? Well, thanks to sophisticated statistical analysis of the pelvis and spine, scientists have been able to reconstruct how a sediba and other early human species moved. Our ancestors probably walked in a way that has been described as a strange combination of a crab and a kangaroo. That's because their spines were curved like crabs and their pelvises were tilted forward like kangaroos. But unlike kangaroos, they didn't hop. Instead, they took small steps while shuffling sideways. Although this isn't how we walk today, this way of moving allowed them to free their hands and use them to manipulate objects, pick up food, and defend themselves against predators. And it is this newfound freedom of movement that may have been the reason our ancestors began walking upright in the first place. However, while our ancestors were busy mastering the art of walking upright, other parts of the world were changing too. As the climate shifted and forests became more widespread, life became easier for early humans. This meant that our ancestors could start to spend less time looking over their shoulders for danger and more time planning for the future. One of the most important innovations that came out of this new way of life was the discovery of fire. Fire changed everything for early humans. It provided warmth in cold climates, protection from nocturnal predators, the ability to cook food, and a way of communicating through smoke signals. Unfortunately though, we don't know exactly when our ancestors discovered fire or how they used it, but we do know that Homo erectus was the first of our ancestors to master this important skill. Homo erectus is famous for being the first human species to leave Africa and spread into Europe and Asia. They also had larger brains than earlier species and were the first to make and use sophisticated stone tools. With their newfound skills and knowledge, they were well equipped to take on the challenges that lay ahead. During their travels, they encountered new environments, climates, and foods. They adapted to these changes and developed new technologies and hunting strategies to survive. For example, in colder climates, they learned to make clothing out of animal skins and to build shelters to protect themselves from the elements. They also developed new tools for hunting, large game, and for gathering plants and fruits. Their adaptability and intelligence allowed them to thrive in a wide variety of environments across the globe. As they spread across the world, they encountered other human species and competed with them for resources. They also interbred with some of these species, leaving behind a mix of genes that can still be found in human populations today. However, as they spread across the world, they also faced new diseases and pathogens to which they had no immunity. Some of these diseases were brought to them by other humans, while others were transmitted by animals or through the consumption of new foods. Despite these challenges, they were able to adapt and survive, thanks to their intelligence, adaptability, and social complexity. As the Ice Age came to an end, the world began to warm and the environment changed once again. This led to the extinction of some species of humans, including Neanderthals, while others, including Homo sapiens, survived and went on to become the only surviving species of human. While our ancestors were busy exploring the world, other dramatic changes were taking place. About 12,000 years ago, at the end of the last Ice Age, the Earth experienced a sudden and dramatic warming period known as the Younger Dryas. Temperatures rose by several degrees, and the ice sheets began to melt, causing sea levels to rise and the Earth's climate to change rapidly. This caused major disruptions to the environment and to human societies, leading to the extinction of some species and the forced migration of others. But humans were not the only ones affected by the changing climate. Many animals went extinct during this period, including woolly mammoths, giant Irish deer, and saber-toothed cats. Humans had to adapt to the changing environment and learn new ways of surviving. They had to find new sources of food, develop new technologies, and learn to live in a world that was rapidly changing around them. One of the most significant changes that occurred during this period was the domestication of plants and animals. Humans began to cultivate crops and raise livestock, which led to the development of agriculture and the establishment of permanent settlements. This marked a significant shift in human history and allowed for the growth of larger and more complex societies. Today, our world is vastly different from the one our ancestors knew. The Younger Dryas is long over and the Earth's climate has stabilized. However, the changes that occurred during this period continue to affect us today. The extinction of many species, including some humans, is a reminder of the fragility of life on Earth and the importance of adapting to change. The domestication of plants and animals and the development of agriculture are some of the most important events in human history and have shaped the way we live today. As we look back on the Younger Dryas, we can learn from the mistakes of the past and work to create a better future for ourselves and for the planet. We hope you enjoyed coming on this journey with us through time. It has been an incredible adventure, and we can't wait to share more amazing stories with you in the future. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.